Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson. We're continuing our study of Jesus' resurrection, and we're looking at Luke's account, and we're going to begin in chapter 24, and we're going to look at 1 through verses 1 through 12. Let's go ahead and read those. On the first day of the week, at early dawn, they came to the tomb, bringing the spices which they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. And it happened that while they were perplexed about this, behold, two men suddenly stood near them in dazzling apparel. And as the women were terrified, they and bowed their faces to the ground, the men said to them, "Why do you seek the living one among the dead? He is not here, he has risen. Remember how he spoke to you while he was still in Galilee, saying that the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, be crucified, and on the third day rise again." And they remembered his words, and returned from the tomb and reported all these things to the 11 and to all the rest. Now they were Mary Magdalene, and Joanna, and Mary the mother of James. Also the other women with them were telling these things to the apostles. And these words appeared to them as nonsense, and they would not believe them. But Peter arose and ran to the tomb, and stooping and looking in, he saw the linen wrappings only, and he went away to his home, marveling at that which had happened. Okay, so Sunday morning, we have the event communicated as we have in all the Gospels. Sunday morning, after when the sun comes up on the day after Sabbath, the women, they are the women whom we're told in chapter 23, beginning with verse 50, were beginning to prepare the body of Jesus for burial in Joseph of Arimathea's tomb. Um, had to come back to finish, and so they had spices and spiced oils and things that they had prepared, so they're coming back, and they found the stone rolled away from the tomb. Luke says they entered. There's that somewhat differs from some of the other accounts. And then we have two. He doesn't call them angels, but he makes clear they are, because they're in dazzling raiment, they're in dazzling garment, dazzling apparel. Um, and it's not imprecise to call them men, because angels throughout Old and New Testament are always male in gender. Um, and they say, "Why do you seek the living one, the living one, not the living, but the living one among the dead?" That phrase, living one, that's important. We may not get the importance of it, but God's name, Yahweh, in the Old Testament, means the one who is, the one who exists. And they describe Jesus as the one who is alive, who embodies life, the one who exists. Why are you looking for him among the dead? He's not here, he's risen. And then they say, remember. And this is, Luke's skill as a biographer, recording that word, because the theme throughout 24 is he's already told you this. Don't you remember? And it's throughout Luke's gospel as well. Luke makes clear in his gospel that Jesus is so specific when he tells them what's about to happen. All the way back to chapter 9. He said, when he turns his face to Jerusalem, this is what's going to happen when we get there. And he tells them these things word for word. As Matthew reminds us, the only one who was listening were the Jews, were the scribes and the members of the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin, who knew exactly what Jesus said he was going to do, and that's why they put a guard on the tomb. But the women and the male disciples, they had forgotten. They don't get it. The women who are there are, and we get a list here: Mary Magdalene and Joanna. Now we meet these two women together at the beginning of chapter 7 in Luke's gospel, and Luke is the one who also tells us that they're part of the group of women who travel with the wandering band of disciples. That this traveling band of disciples that Jesus has called includes women, among whom are Mary Magdalene and Joanna, who was the wife of Chusa, actually it's Chusa. Anyway, who that's not true, and it wasn't nice. We Westerners can't do the glottal stop in Middle Eastern languages. That's about as good as we can do. That was at our expense, not expense of the Middle Eastern languages. Anyway, he was an official in Herod's court. So they have been traveling with him. Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, not Mary, his mother, but another Mary. We've already talked about how popular the name Mary was, and we're not going to try to sort them all out. And other women, and they're all reporting to the apostles, and the apostles think it's nonsense. But then we're told Peter runs and looks in the tomb. John, who writes last, is going to clarify this event happening. Verse 12, your version probably has it in brackets, and it says some ancient manuscripts omit verse 12, and that's true. Not all the ancient manuscripts, most ancient manuscripts include verse 12, but the oldest fragment of Luke that we have, which is a piece of papyrus, P75, which is from which is from the 200s, third century, 200s AD, which is the oldest text of Luke that we have. Is this piece of is P75, the papyrus. It has this verse in it, and so I don't know why we would doubt that it's supposed to be there. So anyway, well, that's what happens initially. Next time we get this glorious event, verse 13, about Jesus walking on the road to Emmaus. Only Luke gives us this account, although Mark refers to it. Anyway, we'll pick up with verse 13 next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes.